bọ́jọ́ bá pẹ́ títí ọjọ́ àpín o bọ́nà bá jìnnà jìnnà àdópin o àti sáré àdópin aré àmàtìjìyà àdópin ìyà o àti sunsun àti kan ògiri ó má ti gbẹ̀yìn kọ́ lọ́tẹ̀ ìmọ̀ o bẹ́ẹ̀ ni o.
ilé òní gbóná kárẹ́nu omi kọ́lé ayé òní kóró kálọ̀ dífá ọ̀run o láyé náà la ó wà títà ó fi ṣẹ́gun lójú àwọn ọlọ́tẹ̀ ẹkún akọjá òkùnkùn ajímọ́lẹ̀ fáwa ọmọ Yorùbá ọjọ́ ayọ̀ súnmọ́lé o.
Di láéláé pọ́n gbá ó mà di láéláé pọ́n gbá Yorùbá ò ní dọ̀bálẹ̀ ẹ̀fẹ́ nìkan ó di gbẹ̀yìn kọ́ lọ́tẹ̀ ìmọ̀ o.
yé ẹ dìde dìde bí ológun ẹ bá jàgà sílẹ̀ o ẹ rántí àtọmọdọ́mọ kò ní sún wa kò ní rẹ̀ wá tá ó fi ṣẹ́gun tẹni tó dé ó sàn ju ẹni tirẹ̀ ń bọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ni ò ní ní dúró kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n 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 àtùpàgbé oníkanni o bí ẹ bá sùn ẹgbẹ́ ọjọ́ ayọ̀ súnmọ́lé o.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. There's not much to be said. Everything that has been said about the trade British contraction of Nigeria and the mess it has become has been said. And the first exodus of migration it has brought upon its indigenous peoples. While Britain and the rest of Europe enjoy French for the France, English for the England, Scotland for the Scottish, Welsh for the Welsh, they don't want us to enjoy the same thing in post-colonial Africa. It is a world's greatest hypocrisy. We will begin now. The Yoruba and Igbo brothers and sisters, we will begin now to implement the process of deamalgamation. We will produce our various constitutions and we will meet in conclave to submit them to various governments and international organizations. We are no longer afraid to say who we are and what we want and how we will be governed. Within the next 3 months before September, the constitutions of the Judeo-Christian Republic of Biafra and the Republic of Oduduwa will be in the hands of the US Congress, will be in the hands of the House of Commons, and will be in the hands of Moscow, the government of Israel, and other peace-loving nations across the world who support peaceful de-amalgamation of that trade-related contraction called the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Our constitutions will also be submitted to the Secretary General of the United Nations, and we will call upon the world to give us a hearing. Nigeria has gone beyond genocide. Nigeria is a humanitarian catastrophe. We want prosperity for our children. We want a future. We want prosperity for our various peoples. We do not want mass migration. We want our peoples to enjoy happiness, a good life at home. And we want our people to grow old where God has placed them. We want the feudal Fulani to go back to where God put them. We want to find happiness with each other, between ourselves. We want to grow as independent nations, become ambassadors to each other, and we are no longer fighting. Anybody giving the myth that Igbos and Yorubas are fighting, it is part of the Fulani contraction. Igbos and Yorubas want the same thing, the good life for their respective peoples. I thank you for listening, and I look forward to your continued support when we release our various constitutions and begin to submit them across governments. This is not a talk show. This is fact. I thank you. Thank you.
Nigeria, which we also recognize, the Edo people, a beautiful people, a great kingdom. We have the Ijaw people, we have the Benue people. For some time, we've always been divided. And that was how the Europeans were able to colonize Africa. When they came, they saw that our civilization was far, far developed. They saw that we had a governance system that was perfect. And the only way they could truncate that is to make sure they bring division. If we never like each other, we will keep fighting each other. And the more we fight each other, the more they plunder our resources. So for some time now, when I say some time, you may think it's 2 days or 5 days or 5 years. We're talking history. For those who are familiar with the Nigerian story, there was a civil war in 1967 due to some mistakes that should never happen. And over 5 million people lost their lives in that civil war between 1967 and 1970. That civil war ended, and we all shook hands and said, let's give it another go and become one nation. Still, it still hasn't worked. The divide and rule continues to pester. And the more we are divided, the more we are not able to articulate what we are doing. So, in about some 7 years ago, due to the atrocities going on in Nigeria, Yoruba people decided that we've had enough. After over 100 years of amalgamation and 60 years of independence, Nigeria has nothing to show for it. And when you're talking of the Yoruba people, you're talking of a great civilization. For instance, part of our governance system is what Britain is using today. So it tells you that the Yoruba people have developed a political system that works for us. The monarchy rules by consent and not by force. I know when people hear monarchical system, they think it's a system where the king just dictates what happens to everybody. No, in Yoruba land, the king knows his limit. So today is the first of so many events that's going to be taking place, which is the launching of the coalition to deamalgamate Nigeria for security. And we are saying self-determination is the only path to prevent conflict and secure lasting peace in Nigeria. For instance, in Nigeria, it's illegal to bear arms. So I know in the United States here, you could, if you are sensible and you have mental capacity, you could go out and buy a gun. It's illegal in Nigeria. But one particular tribe lives above the law. And they're using that sophisticated military-grade weapon to terrorize everybody. And we are saying, in as much as self-determination is enshrined in the United Nations articles, Article 1 and 2, it says every people who have a unique language, a unique identity, and a unique boundary can demand for their self-determination. This law has been domesticated in the African Union Charter and has also been domesticated in Nigerian law. And we've seen President of Nigeria, the late Muhammadu Buhari, clamoring for self-determination for the Palestine. But why did he not do it for the southern Nigeria, who are requesting their own self-determination? Recently, the vice president, when I say recently, I'm talking last year, the vice president stood in New York and asked the United Nations to grant Palestine their own self-determination. Why is he not asking his president to grant the Yoruba people and other people of southern Nigeria their own self-determination. So we welcome the world media to the inaugural press conference of the Coalition for Deamalgamation and Security, an alliance of indigenous civil forces and ethnic nationalities, peacefully agitating to de-amalgamate Nigeria in order to end the pervading cycle of violence and humanitarian crisis in Nigeria. CODES, which is the Coalition to De-amalgamate Nigeria for Security. So CODES is the name for short. Is championed by the two largest southern nationalities, the Oduduwa, which we call Yoruba people in the west, and the Biafra, Igbo in the east, whose people have endured systemic corruption, terrorism, displacement, and political exclusion under the present arrangement. Nigeria today survives not on truth, justice, or consent, but on systemic denial and institutionalized falsehood. The state persistently represents realities on the ground, misleading its own citizens and the international community, while concealing mass atrocities, unchecked terrorism, and a growing humanitarian disaster. This culture of deception has replaced accountability and rendered the Nigerian state incapable of protecting lives or commanding moral legitimacy. Therefore, the Oduduwa, Yoruba, and Biafra Igbo nations, together representing the largest concentration of Judeo-Christian communities in Africa, with vibrant indigenous institutions and a globally influential diaspora, hereby announce a historic alliance for the peaceful de-amalgamation of Nigeria. This de-amalgamation congress is open to all indigenous nations trapped within the Nigerian state. It is a non-violent, lawful, and internationally recognized exercise of self-determination, born not of necessity and survival, but necessitated by decades of systemic injustice, insecurity, and the state's persistent failure to protect its people. Our collaboration reflects not extremism, but exhaustion and lies and insecurity and a lawful insistence on dignity, safety, and political consent. Our demand for self-determination is legitimate, peaceful, and just. It is grounded in international law, including the United Nations Charter, the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, and the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The Yoruba-Igbo partnership represents a historic choice to replace coercion with consent and instability with sustainable peace. Faced with state-tolerated violence, terrorism, and the constant threat to impose Sharia nationwide, we affirm before the world that only a peaceful separation through self-determination is the only guarantee of security, justice, and survival for its long-suffering peoples. The current crisis in Nigeria, while it has roots in colonial amalgamation structures, from the British colonial indirect rule via the Sokoto Caliphate to post-colonial centralization, it is fueled and sustained by high-level stolen state resources, looted through systemic corruption, by the caliphate-aligned forces. Nigeria has preserved a corrupt, powerful structure that concentrates authority in the caliphate in the north and marginalized poorer identities, thus weakening federal balance. The 1914 amalgamation imposed on us without our consent and was a colonial convenience, not a social contract or a contract we entered willfully. The independence of 1960 did not dismantle this injustice. It inherited it and entrenched it. A state founded without consent cannot indefinitely survive against consent. So there are some historical perspectives to this, which is the Sokoto Jihad that started in 1804. Between 1804 and 1810, there was a man named Uthman Danfodio. He started jihad and ethnic cleansing of the Fulani, of the Hausa people. And he wiped out a lot of all their rulers, and the caliphate began to rule in the north. In 1825, the British started to begin their colonization trade. And in 1861, they captured Lagos. And by 1900, they had both the northern and the southern Nigeria as two separate entities. And in 1914, through trickery, they amalgamated the two regions without consent. There was no vote, there was no, not even the traditional rulers knew what was happening. Before we knew it, we found ourselves in a nation that we didn't even know what the region was. So the present Nigeria crisis cannot be understood without confronting the 19th century Sokoto Jihad by Uthman Danfodio, which created a caliphate state built by force. And when we hear people, the president of America, saying they are killing Christians and genocide, that's just on the face value. What's going on is worse than can be imagined. Congressman Moore was recently in Nigeria, and what he saw, I believe, shook him. When you have over 1 million people, more than 3 million people displaced in a country where they say there is no war, then you ask yourself, what is going on? Did we consent to killing and maiming by extreme forces that are claiming that it doesn't matter who owns the land or who lives in the land, they want our land by force? So we say that enough of this terror by, I don't know whether I'm talking about, but say what they told us before was that since we have not resisted, we are acquiescing to what they are doing. So we're using this medium to make the world understand that self-determination is enshrined in international law, and we are determined to use lawful and legal means to demand what rightly belongs to us. How did we get here? It was through the colonial engineering of Britain using Fulani dominance. For context, the Fulani are not, they are what you would call wanderers. They don't have a settled land, so they roam wherever uh, their life takes them. And that's how they find themselves in what is now Nigeria. And the British, when they were leaving Nigeria as independent, uh, was looking for who to hand over Nigeria to. And they decided that they were not going to give it to the original owners of the land. So they called the Fulani and handed over Nigeria to them. And this was all documented because a British government official who was there at the time, in the name of Mr. Smith, he narrated the whole thing, that the whole election in 1960 was rigged so that the Fulani would rule and continue to rule Nigeria for the British, not for the Nigerian people. So at independence, Nigeria inherited a state structure tilted towards the caliphate, even though they were the least organized or least ready to lead that country. This was an imbalance that has never been corrected till today. Indirectly, the British colonial administration preserved and empowered the caliphate institutions, ruled northern Nigeria through Fulani emir, dismantled or weakened southern indigenous governance. The British continues to extend post-colonial influence in Nigeria through the caliphate. The attention of the whole world has recently been riveted on Nigeria as a result of the invasion of its civil space by Islamic terrorists, operating from three strategic directions. The first is the Fulani herdsmen, stroke Maiti Allah, who are a hybrid of the Fulani at home in Nigeria and their imported cousins from the West and Central African sub-regions. The second is the Boko Haram, real name Jamaat al-Sunnah li-Dawa wa al-Jihad, meaning a group of people of Sunnah for Dawa and Jihad. The Boko Haram name translates roughly to Western education is forbidden. Many of us know the story of the Chibok girls that were kidnapped in 2014. Over 600 schoolgirls were kidnapped until today. Not all those girls are free. Majority of them are still in forests in Nigeria. And the third arm the caliphate is using is ISWA, which is the new kid on the block. ISWA is the short name for Islamic State West African Province, which is a loose combination of Al-Qaeda, Al-Shabaab, and the remnants of ISIS, who have a burning desire to recreate the ISIS idea with headquarters in West Africa, Nigeria, and the Sahel. Across large swaths of Nigeria, communities have been violently uprooted from their ancestral lands. Villages, farmlands, churches, and livelihoods are destroyed. Yet, perpetrators are rarely prosecuted. Victims are rarely resettled. Justice is systemically deferred. Even more disturbing, state-sponsored programs purporting to rehabilitate perpetrators are proceeded without transparency, consent of victims, or credible accountability mechanisms. While the displaced remain dispossessed, the inversion of justice, which confronts the aggressors and neglects the victim, has severely shattered public trust. Nigeria today faces an existential security crisis. Boko Haram, ISWAP, Fulani militia, the armed herders network operates with alarming impunity. Entire communities in the northwest, northeast, north central, middle belt, southeast, the Niger Delta, southwest, Yoruba land are continually attacked. Eyewitness testimonies, video evidence, and local investigations consistently report attackers identifying as Fulani militants. Security forces always arrive late or not at all. Military helicopters can be seen dropping supplies to Fulani terrorists in the forests. We ask ourselves, who can afford an helicopter? Not many people can afford a gun. So where is terrorism coming from in Nigeria? Fulani terrorists are displaying their kidnappers and ransom on social media. Their victims are left without justice. Nigerian army burning ancestral homes in the southeast, in the middle belt, and in the southwest, only for the Fulani marauders to come occupy. Nigerian security forces are openly colluding with the armed terrorists. The Fulani Caliphate has turned terrorism into a lucrative business in Nigeria. Human security has become very expensive. The Nigerian state has failed its primary duty, the protection of lives and properties. Fulani from outside Nigeria have used terrorism with state protection to steal ancestral land and remap Nigeria territories, undermining state authority by imposing Sharia and tax on unprotected communities. Nigeria today embodies selective justice, in that the leader of the Igbo group, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, and a great warrior of the Yoruba people, Chief Sunday Adeyemo, aka Igbo, embody the persistent call for self-determination. Yet Nigeria wastes resources prosecuting them while enabling Fulani who threaten lives, land, and sovereignty, proving that only self-determination can guarantee and the security and dignity the state refused to uphold, while violent actors roam free on the streets. Peaceful self-determination advocates such as Chief Sunday Igboho and Mazi Nnamdi Kanu have been pursued and prosecuted with extraordinary state resources. In the case of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, he was extraordinarily renditioned from Kenya to Nigeria, whereas we have Fulani sympathizers like Sheikh Ahmed Gumi roaming the streets of Nigeria, even with security. This selective application of law has destroyed confidence in the Nigerian state. The Nigerian masses, especially millions of Judeo-Christian and other vulnerable populations, are eternally grateful to President Donald Trump and the great people of America for their courageous support of the persecuted minority people of Nigeria. Despite the US intervention, the Fulani terrorists have continued to terrorize Nigeria in the north, middle belt, and the south, Christians are still being targeted. Abductions in churches, killings and kidnappings continue to be perpetrated by these Fulani extremists. Credible reports indicate that the Nigerian government has recently retained high-cost lobbying and public relations services in Washington, allegedly running into millions of dollars for the purpose of countering international scrutiny, particularly on allegations of mass atrocities and religious persecution. Whether the precise figures are 9 million, as we hear, or otherwise, that we don't know, the moral contradiction is unmistakable. While internally displaced persons, mostly Christians and other vulnerable communities, languish in makeshift camps without food, medicine, or security. Some survivors sleep under plastic sheets, depending on charity, while widows, orphans, and the elderly remain abandoned by the state. The government finds resources to polish its image abroad, rather than heal its own people at home. This is not governance, it is moral bankruptcy. 3 days ago, over 177 people were kidnapped in a church in Kaduna State. How can 177 people be kidnapped? What means were they kidnapped? Was it not a vehicle? Has the government not got satellite to trace these vehicles? Can Nigeria no longer fund its security apparatus to deal with security situations in Nigeria? I'm sure to kidnap over 177, you need at least 5 to 10 buses. What was the heat signatures? Can Nigeria not trace it? This shows that the government is colluding with the terrorists that are killing its own people. We must now sound a dire note of warning to the whole world that should the Islamist terrorists be allowed, either by omission or commission, neglect or non-challenge, to have ascendancy and control over the total geographic space of present-day Nigeria, the horror, atrocities, and genocide perpetrated by the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, in the Levant, will be a child's play when compared with the horrendous agenda of these demonic hordes. The world must rise to stop it, or be prepared to accommodate a humanitarian catastrophe and mass migration that will swarm the whole of Africa and many parts of the world. We must remember that Nigeria's population is a quarter of Africa. We're talking of 250 million people in just Nigeria, whereas Africa is about 1.2, 1.3 billion people. And Nigeria's population is projected to be more than that of China at the end of this century. Our media in Nigeria are silent. The Nigerian state has refused to name its crisis honestly. What community experience as a systemic terror, displacement, and religious targeting? The Nigeria media rebrands it as communal clashes. Hardened Fulani terrorists are rebranded as bandits. Wanton Fulani terror on vulnerable Christian communities rebranded as farmer-herder clashes. This deliberate euphemism is not accidental. It is state policy engineered to protect the caliphate. By denying the ideological, religious, and organized character of the violence, the Nigerian mainstream media have largely downplayed mass killing in rural and minority communities, criminalized victims who organize for self-defense or self-determination, echoed official narratives while ignoring eyewitness evidence. They've caused silence to become complicity. They've shielded the state and the caliphate from accountability. They've silenced victims and protected the caliphate's terror chief enablers and spokesmen like Sheikh Ahmad Gumi. What we are now demanding is peaceful self-determination, which we say is the only viable path. Nigeria is on the brink of a catastrophic civil war, driven by perceived attempts at forced Islamization, unchecked Fulani Caliphate-linked terrorism, and the collapse of state protection, with communities increasingly convinced that survival, not politics, is at stake. In a country of over 230 million people, mostly young and economically vulnerable, such a war would detonate a humanitarian and migration crisis of global proportion, destabilizing West Africa and beyond. Therefore, we must always insist that self-determination is the only immediate, non-violent escape route, because this diffuses zero-sum denomination. It restores consent and it strips the extremists of grievance fuel and replaces the looming mass bloodshed with lawful political choices. So we may ask, why the amalgamation? Amid relentless state-backed caliphate expansion and terrorism, the amalgamation of Nigeria emerges as a pragmatic necessity for survival. Decades of selective state protection, impunity for armed groups, and erosion of constitutional secularism have proven that centralized authority can no longer guarantee safety or justice. Nigeria's crisis is no longer merely political, it is existential. Every attempt to preserve Nigeria's unity by force has done only one thing: increased violence, deepened mistrust, and expanded humanitarian crisis. Self-determination is not secessionist extremism. It is a conflict prevention mechanism when the state has irreparably failed in its primary duty. Self-determination, granting autonomous governance to historically distinct nations, offer the only credible path to restore security, protect communities, and preserve cultural and political sovereignty within a lawful and peaceful framework. We therefore call the recognition of the states of Biafra and Oduduwa nations by the Nigerian government and the international communities. The immediate release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu and all detainees held solely for self-determination advocacy. Immediate cessation of the hunt for Chief Sunday Adeyemo Igboho, who, by the way, has not committed any crime, has not killed anybody, has only said, "Stop killing my people," but the Nigerian government puts him on a wanted list. An international investigation into mass killings and state complicity A United Nations recognized referendum process for all indigenous nations who seek it. Protection for vulnerable Christians and indigenous communities across Nigeria. Immediate end to Sharia law and disarming of the Fulani and other terrorist groups as present in Nigeria. A free Yoruba and Biafran sovereign nations will represent consent-based governance, accountability to citizens, protection of religious and cultural pluralism. Their diaspora already demonstrates extraordinary achievements in medicine, technology, law, entrepreneurship, and academia. In conclusion, long before the artificial creation of Nigeria in 1914, Biafra and Oduduwa nations existed as distinct, organized civilizations with defined territories, governance systems, economies, and international trade networks. Meeting every classical and modern criterion of nationhood. The peoples of Biafra, anchored by Igbo republican institutions and closely linked coastal policies, developed sophisticated systems of self-governance, commerce, craftsmanship, and diplomacy, sustained one of Africa's most dynamic mercantile cultures, while the Oduduwa and Yoruba civilization built enduring city-states such as Ile-Ife, Oyo, Ijebu, and Ibadan, among many others, with advanced political administrations, military organization, law, and culture. These nations were not tribes, but functioning polities, possibly subsumed into a colonial construct designed by British imperial convenience. Not indigenous stability, but chaos. Today, both Oduduwa and Biafra possesses all objective prerequisites for viability. Large, educated, entrepreneurial population, abundant human and mineral resources, strategic geography with technological potential, and one of the most economically powerful and globally connected diasporas in Africa. The Biafra and Oduduwa alliance is not a declaration of war. It is a declaration of truth, dignity, and peaceful intent. The first unity of Nigeria has failed. The silence of our people and our leaders has failed. Repression has failed. Therefore, self-determination remains the only path to lasting peace and regional security. Therefore, we are pursuing the only solution that can guarantee the safety and sustainable security of the constituent nations within Nigeria. And what we desire is a complete dissolution of the country and separation into individual nations. Yugoslavia faced similar problem in 1980 when they were killing each other willfully. And in 1991, the nations of Yugoslavia decided to go their own way. Today, 6 individual nations that came out of Yugoslavia are prospering and no more at war with themselves. All we ask is for the dignity to be able to choose our own future. Thank you very much. We've got any questions? We could accommodate some few questions before we go. Okay. I'm going to call Madam Ambassador, who is representing the Igbo nation here today, to come and perhaps give us one or two words from the Igbo people. Thank you.
Ọjọ́ bá pẹ́ títí ọjọ́ àgbìn o, bọ́nà bá jìnnà jìnnà àdópin o. Àti sáré àdópin aré, àmàtí jìyà àdópin ìyà o. Àti súnsún àti kan ògiri, ó má ti gbẹ̀yìn kọ́ lọ́tẹ̀ ìmọ̀ o bẹ́ẹ̀ ni o.
Ilé òní gbóná kárẹ́nu omi kọ́lé, ayé òní kóró kálọ̀ dífá ọ̀run o. Láyé náà la ó wà, títà ó fi ṣẹ́gun lójú àwọn ọlọ́tẹ̀. Ẹkún akọjá òkùnkùn ajímọ́lẹ̀ fáwa ọmọ Yorùbá, ọjọ́ ayọ̀ súnmọ́lé o.
Ó di láéláé pọ́n gbá, ó mà di láéláé pọ́n gbá. Yorùbá ò ní dọ̀bálẹ̀ ẹ̀fẹ́ nìkan, ó di gbẹ̀yìn kọ́ lọ́tẹ̀ ìmọ̀ o.
Yé ẹ dìde dìde bí ológun, ẹ bá jàgà sílẹ̀ o, ẹ rántí àtọmọdọ́mọ. Kò ní sún wa, kò ní rẹ̀ wá, tá ó fi ṣẹ́gun. Tẹni tó dé ó sàn ju ẹni tirẹ̀ ń bọ̀. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ò ní ní dúró. Kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n, kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n, kẹ́dúró gbọ̀n, gbọ̀n, gbọ̀n. Àtùpà tó